and I love it. Thank you guys for all being here again. Very important topic. The first one is going to be hemp revive and survive. What I'll do is I will start with Philip. How about we start with you? Legislative changes and implications. Okay. Now, is there a possibility to revive dead markets given the legislative changes, and from state to state through the wins and losses of hemp? Let's say like in markets that are dead. Is there a possibility of lobbying to change those legislative changes possibly?
Great question. And to answer that, I think it's rather complicated, but in short, yes. I think there is ways to, for lack of a better phrase, put the jumper cables on a state market that maybe once went away or fell victim to some bad legislation that was influenced by multi-state marijuana interests or just pure prohibitionist mentalities, because I think in some ways people don't know what they don't know, and so a lack of education, whether that be with policymakers on the respective Capitol Hills in different states, with law enforcement in different states, educational opportunities exist all the time. And I think that if you're playing off the back foot, you kind of fall victim to a market that may go away. But getting ahead of those things, or potentially seeing things banned outright and then undoing that ban. Ultimately, my preference for these things is to be done through policy and then through legislation, and then unfortunately in some instances it has to go to litigation. But yes, I do think that you can kind of fix mistakes. Quite frankly, a lot of people, once they've banned these products outright, realize that the demand for them is not going to go away. And when that demand doesn't go away and these products come in via e-commerce or across state lines and other markets that may not have robust regulatory frameworks in place, then they realize that they're actually doing more harm than good by killing these markets across the country.
Absolutely. Great answer. And I had a question for Ro, but I'm going to ask you, being you're an expert, I know you can answer it. What is going on with the Farm Bill at the federal level?
That's a pretty expansive question. I'll try to answer that somewhat quickly.
And you can bounce around if you need to telephone a friend. We've seen that earlier.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a number of friends I would phone in DC. But quick and dirty update is, I think the Farm Bill, more than likely, depending on who you ask, nothing is likely going to happen this year. Although there is a possibility that it could be revived in the lame duck session after the November election. And this could be as recently impacted as the natural disasters of Helene, Hurricane Milton that came through Florida recently, because of the devastating impacts that those had to those agricultural markets in parts of the Southeast. There's prevailing sentiments that, if the Dems in the House can the Dems in the Senate can come forward, provided they get what they want, or at least somewhere closer to what they want with some of the spending packages like EBT or SNAP, if they can get closer to where they want with those things, then we might see some movement on the Farm Bill in the lame duck session. But if that doesn't happen, then I think it could be subject to continuing resolution that would go through into 2025.
Perfect. Great answer. And did anyone else want to talk on that by chance? I know it's a loaded question. It is. There's a lot going on, but
I mean, it just depends who wins the election, I think, is the simplicity of it. Depending on what the Senate thinks that they can do given the election will depend on what happens to the Farm Bill. The fate of the Farm Bill is completely based on the election or any spending package or any type of federal legislation that they want to push forward.
Correct. And Philip, my last question for you is, what type of legislation will this association be pushing for in Florida, being that we're in Florida next legislative session?
I think that what this association is going to be pushing for in Florida is something that helps meet the market where it's at. In the past 2 years, Florida Healthy Alternatives and Governor DeSantis kind of beat back large marijuana interests within the state that essentially, put handcuffs on the hemp industry in the state of Florida, which happens to be the largest state for the hemp industry within the country. And so what I think is ultimately going to be pushed is legislation that allows the market to continue to exist, perhaps additional guardrails around packaging or labeling requirements, even though those regulations are already fairly robust, some additional clarification regarding maybe time, place, and manner restrictions on how, where, and when these products can be sold. But I think Florida is going to continue to kind of be, one of the gold standard bearers across the country when it comes to hemp. And it's going to give Florida the opportunity, again, to continue shining as far as a national model for what can be done.
Perfect. Great answer. Do you think that now that we got the veto in Florida, other states are sort of, going to follow suit, or you think that?
Well, I think, and there's certainly other people on this panel that could speak to this a hair bit better than I could, but I think as Florida goes, so does the rest of the country in some regards.
That's what I hear.
15th largest economy in the world, seat of Republican power within the United States. And I think, Florida's ability to do this the right way through a regulatory framework, again, that balances consumer safety with market demand, really could actually portend for good legislation across the country, because I think people do pay attention to Florida. Florida has had a spotlight on it for the last 2 years in, the form of 120 days. So 2 legislative sessions in Florida, not that much time, but the nation has been paying a lot of close attention to it. And so I think Florida has an opportunity to get it right, and the nation will certainly hopefully pay attention, if not follow suit.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Philip, and I appreciate your expertise. And I'd like to push into Drew, if I could ask you a question on just advocacy strategies and effective advocacy. How can businesses and operators effectively advocate for their businesses?
Participating with American Healthy Alternatives Association, grouping up with other companies to make sure your voice is heard. One of the key pieces we have to do in the hemp industry is avoid some of the fractions that have happened in our community. We sell a broad range of different products. Many of them are being regulated differently, and some old friends now see opportunities for regulatory capture that make enemies out of previous coalitions. You have to monitor this on every single side and try to make sure that we're building strong coalitions amongst ourselves to have a unified voice and demand what we see as the best option for the future. We have a positive vision for what hemp can be, and it's not about being reactive to bad legislation over and over again. It's about pushing for this plan that we have about labeling, packaging, marketing, age gating, these ideas that are already in place in certain economies, and not just defending places where we're attacked, but attacking in places where we've already lost, and there is no hemp industry today. I see a vision where those markets can be opened up again. But I would love to bounce this question to you, Roger. Yeah, what do you think some of the best techniques for us as an industry are in order to see these changes happen?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. Quick campaign commercial. The only reason we have a vibrant $30 billion hemp industry that's created over 320,000 jobs is because of the greatest president since Abraham Lincoln, Donald J. Trump. Secondarily, as far as amendments to the Farm Bill, I say if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That law, the hemp amendments to the Farm Bill, which I was an advocate for, along with Senator Rand Paul, has created this vibrant, growing industry. Specifically to your question, I think that people matter, that you need to harness your customers, you need to harness your employees, you need to harness those people in the country, in key states, in key areas, who support the industry, who patronize the industry because they have votes. And politicians are about getting reelected. They're about raising the money to get reelected. And you have many, many voices. I think you have to be prepared to identify them. You have to be prepared to mobilize them. I think that's one of the absolute keys.
Thank you so much, Roger. I appreciate that. I just had a quick question, if I can, for you, Roger.
Sure.
What do you think they would try to change on the Farm Bill, I guess?
Well, look, I'm hardly an expert, but I think they can fiddle with percentages and different interpretations of the acceptable levels of THC, and that would, I think, could destroy the industry. I think that may be the idea of some that would advocate those kind of reforms. I get most of my advice from AJ Fabrizio, who's a scientist, but who also understands the political side. So I've had a quick education. I'm a longtime advocate for the legalization of cannabis going back many years. Cannabis helped my father when he was dying of cancer enormously. He was wasting away. He was in horrific pain. He had no appetite. And I can tell you the medicinal marijuana system here in Florida sucks. It's cumbersome, it's bureaucratic, it's expensive, it's limited, it's restrictive. And it was meant to be that way. When the voters here approved it, they approved the larger question of medicinal legalization, but then a hostile Republican legislature and a hostile Republican governor tried to make this as hard to get and as restrictive as possible. So as I think most of you know, if you have depression or you have a bad back, no, you can't get cannabis medicinally for those purposes. So I, as a libertarian, I have a long history in this area. I am still learning the differences. I rely very much on my friend AJ, who's illuminated me. He wrote a great piece. You can go to our Rumble channel, rumble.com/Roger Stone. There's a great interview with AJ. There's also a print piece that he wrote for my website, stonezone.com. A very, I think, good both scientific and political analysis of the industries and where we're going. I favor no changes in the federal law. I think that these things have to be worked out at the state level.
Great answer.
I have a question for you, Roger, just because I've gotten to know you and AJ a little bit. But what did AJ tell you, or even maybe myself tell you, that really stuck out to you where you find yourself in the chair today, you know, speaking with these fine gentlemen right here on my left and my right? But why is hemp interesting to you?
First of all, I really did not understand how quickly the industry has grown, how many jobs it's created, how much economic opportunity it's created. I also was not fully aware of its many applications. I mean, we're not just talking about smoking it, even though I'm convinced that Benjamin Franklin and Tom Jefferson probably did exactly that. But you can make cement out of it. You can make material out of it. You can make all kinds of useful things out of it. This is why I think we have a utility, an ability to grow beyond where the industry is today. So look, as somebody who's pro-freedom, I don't want to see this industry regulated to death. As I said earlier, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Yeah, some reasonable regulation at the state level. I don't think that's unreasonable, but there's no reason to strangle what is already working.
Thank you. And I guess just this question would be open format for anyone here. What do you think the long-term future of collaborating with policymakers is going to be like?
Wow, that was a broad question.
Or what would you like it to be like? You know,
I think we talk about having a positive vision for the hemp industry, but I think more broadly, we have a positive vision of the future of the United States. The United States has looked the world over for policy in European nations and South American countries and Asian countries. We usually lead the way forward, and I think in marijuana versus hemp, or more broadly, all of cannabis, we really have to fight to keep the market as open as possible. Post-alcohol prohibition, the implementation of the three-tiered system strangled the small business opportunity in the alcohol space. In the last 15 years, the Craft Brewers Association, the microbreweries have all stood up to large commercial interests like Anheuser-Busch, Coors, Constellation brands to give themselves the right to exist and operate in the alcohol space. But that wasn't given to them. They had to fight for it. And I think the same thing needs to be true in the hemp space. We have to fight to give the small businesses a voice at the quote-unquote marijuana table, right? This is the only opportunity we're ever going to have. If this goes away, I don't think any of us are going to have enough money to go up against a $50 billion or $100 billion corporation that controls the way the laws are written. So.
No, and I love that. And Drew, you were saying something yesterday about, because I remember I was bouncing that question around, and you said something about hopefully where the policymakers will be people that, you know, we put in position or something in that area.
I think certainly as we develop as an industry broadly, and let's hope that things work out in the Farm Bill and there's other federal support, whether that be Tax and Trade Bureau or even the FDA, where things ultimately end up. Once you're a large enough industry, executives and intelligent people from that industry, whether they do product design or whatnot, are also well suited to be regulators of that industry because they have the most intimate knowledge about what's going on. So we want to not only imagine ourselves as oppositional to certain regulation, which is easy to put yourself in that position today when it feels like those things are happening to you, but in the long-term future, this is a regulatory department that we will be a part of, where certain appointments will come from industry professionals with industry in mind. The hope is that there's a dialectic relationship between eventual regulators and the largest companies in the space.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And Bret, I do want to get to you because we've heard a lot from everyone else, and I don't want this to end without you talking. But no worries. But the next topic is exploring new market opportunities. And just with MC Nutraceuticals in general, you know, we've heard great things about the brand, and we're always continuing to hear better things about the brand. I guess, what are the emerging trends and innovations you're seeing in the hemp market?
Well, I think there's lots of things. So, you know, our company does a combination between dealing with new regulations, going into new markets, and creating new cannabinoids through innovation and science. But, you know, new markets are popping up all over the world, whether it's Asia, South America, specifically Europe. I'll be at a big event. Was it 2 weeks, I think, in Prague? There's hundreds of, you know, it's like MJ BizCon, but it's called CannaFest in Prague. You know, all over the country, we ship to 30 nations, you know, legally, you know, different cannabinoids that are legal per that country's regulations. And we're going to keep seeing the hemp industry continually grow every year through, you know, lack of regulation in other states that allows for promotion of innovation, essentially. So marijuana will continually be constrained, and you won't be able to export or manufacture in a state to another country, or even to another state for that matter. And hemp can export to every nation, if you will. You know, cannabis is marijuana and hemp. What, you know, the difference is 0.3% delta 9 THC. Everything else is legal to be exported. So as long as the country receiving HHC, for example, hexahydrocannabinol, will take it, then we can ship it out. The Czech Republic just passed a law that we've been helpful in, which is going to re-legalize HHC. So they banned it. Talk about, you know, opening up dead markets. Is they're going to re-legalize HHC as long as the prime minister signs off on it. It just passed the Senate.
Wasn't that just like THCO too? Didn't that just something I read on that?
THCO is an interpretation which the Chevron deference case in the Supreme Court kind of shot down. So the DEA decided THCO was illegal. It wasn't. It's a hemp derivative, and then it came back essentially. There was a court case that affirmed the legality of the derivative THCO. So, you know, we'll continue. Innovation's the number one answer, essentially, to any new market, I would say, or any dying market. I mean, you see Elon Musk and rocket ships. We've been sending rockets up to space for a long time. Here comes this billionaire that makes his own rocket, right? Yeah. It's no different than the hemp and the marijuana space. I mean, you can see the same parallels to what happens when you kind of shove the man down and put these onerous restrictions on them, and then, you know, young, innovative people come out of the hemp space with a $30 billion market that took 30% of the time.
And we're wrapping up here, and as we get to the end, I always like to leave off on an inspirational piece. So could you go into what advice would you have for operators, distributors, brands, et cetera, how to stay innovative, how to be ready to pivot, and how to just be ahead of the trend? So do you have any advice for anybody?
The only way to know what to do is if you're playing the game. So get involved in the game. As Roger said, make sure that you're involved in votes and you're talking to your state representatives or senators or whoever they are. And then you can also email any congressperson. Like, you should know who your congressperson is and let them know how many jobs you have, how many people you're affecting, and make sure they know your issue, because, you know, us on the stage are only so many people. You know, we have large teams, obviously, that work with us, but you know, if we multiply to 322,000 jobs and they all know the issue, and then they tell all the consumers, the hundreds of millions of people across the world that consume our products what the issue is, boom, you have the votes. So education's everything. You want to jump in there?
No, I guess the only other point I would make is that the other reason I see a great future here is that because of the specificity of CBD. So without hemp, in all honesty, I wouldn't be able to sleep. Without hemp, I wouldn't be able to focus to write my Substack. Without a product I use called Rewind, I wouldn't get the kind of renewed energy that I need to work the ridiculous hours that I'm putting in. So I like the ability to have very specific products that are tailored for very specific purposes. There's no guessing involved. This is why I think this has a phenomenal, unlimited future. I'm a happy customer. Let me put it that way.
I love that. I love that. And I guess, Roger, to end that off, is there anything that you'd like to share story-wise, something inspirational that you've done that, where you see the future going with hemp, and anything that you can think of that leaves the crowd in a good
Look,
mood?
we have a very close election coming up. Donald Trump is the father of the modern hemp industry. And if those who appreciate hemp, those who use hemp, those who benefit from hemp, those who make money on hemp as a business don't support him, God knows what we may get in a new administration. So the hemp industry is vulnerable today. And this election is going to be, in my opinion, going to be extraordinarily close. So let us remember who it is who gave us this opportunity and get out every single vote for President Donald Trump.
What a way to end. I love it. Let's go. Can we make some noise for the crowd and the panelists? Make some noise for yourselves. So we appreciate you guys so much. We are going to have another question, and if you guys have any questions from the crowd, if you guys could please raise your hand and
Roger's
ask.
got 6 minutes for if anyone wants to ask him.
Michael, please.
So if Amendment 3 were to pass, how would that affect the federally legal cannabis industry and the next Farm Bill?
I'll take that one. That's a good one. If Amendment 3 passes, first of all, you got to think about the stock prices and the stock valuation of all of the major marijuana multi-state operators. They're going to skyrocket. Whether it's double, triple, quadruple, they could 10x, who knows? There would be a ton of confidence in the marijuana space. What are they going to do that would benefit them the most is get rid of their small business competition. I think if Amendment 3 passes, it's going to give them all the money, all the resources, all the confidence in the world, and the constitutional protection to fight us and do everything they can to kill us. That, I think, is a very real reality, and I think you have to understand that constitutional civil liability protection for marijuana operators will not go away. You would need another constitutional amendment to remove it. And I don't know anyone that's going to spend $150 million to redo a constitutional amendment to fix some of those constitutional protections that almost no other company on the planet has.
Well, if everybody donates, we might be able to make it there. $150 times what? 100 and